Hi, everyone. Welcome back to That's Delivered, the podcast that delivers insights straight from trucking world to your ears. I'm Ray, and today we have a really important topic to dive into. If you're a union member or a driver working in the trucking industry, this episode is especially for you. Our guest today is Scott Wilkie from the local Teamsters Union Hall 638 here in the Twin Cities in Minnesota. For those who may not know exactly what goes on at the Union Hall or how it helps us as a driver, um, today's episode is going to shine light on that. We'll break through some of the misconceptions. We'll break down Scott's role, talk about his projects, and also anything that's coming up in the future that may impact you directly. We're here also exploring some of the common questions that drivers may have. So, Scott, welcome to the show. It's really great to have you on.
Ray, thanks for having me on, man. I'm really excited to be here today.
Nice, very nice. A lot of times we have the union hall and we don't know who's there or what's going on. So when you said you'll come on the show, it really will shine some light on a lot of the topics. So I appreciate it, man. It helps out tremendously.
Yeah, for our local, which you're a member in, we represent a variety of industries, most of which is UPS. So if you meet anybody who works for UPS and in the entire state of North Dakota, or basically from Brainerd, Minnesota south, they're a Teamsters Local 638 member. So we have a pretty wide territory. It's about 700 miles from our furthest two UPS centers, which is Winona, Minnesota, and Williston, North Dakota. And so we have thousands of UPS workers that we represent in between those two centers. And so it's nice to find different ways like this to connect with folks when we can't see each other face to face. So this is a great outlet for that.
Awesome. That's awesome. Hey, so just kind of dive into it. Can you share how you got started in the union?
Sure. So I'll give you the kind of my full story. So my parents are both union teachers, and I have siblings and aunts and uncles. Everybody's a teacher in my family, so that's what I went to college to do. And as you're probably aware, most people know teachers. It's not a very lucrative career, and it took me a little longer to graduate. So I had a lot of student loan debt, and my salary that they had at the time was about 39K a year starting out, which is not much now, and it's not much back then either. And so I needed another job. And I started working at UPS in the summer as a seasonal package car driver, doing residential delivery for those folks who listen who don't know what that is. And I was like, wow, this job is going to pay me twice as much as the job that I went to get a degree for. And I also really liked the job. I liked being outside. I liked feeding the dogs treats and stuff and making, building relationships with the customers. And I'm like, I think this is it. So I got offered a full-time position back in 2010, and I've just been I was doing that ever since. But I've always had this kind of like I don't know, calling to, do more. Like for a lot of folks, it's very comfortable. Like, you have the same route every day, the same customers. You've got a very secure union job and benefits and your retirement with your pension. Like, there's a very very secure safety net in that job that a lot of people take comfort in. And for me, I couldn't just like check the box every day and say, yeah, I did a good job. I serviced the customers, made money. I needed more. And so I started getting involved in the union work, and then just helping out in a big center. And then John Keycheck, who's now the president of our local 638, was my steward at the time. And he kind of brought me in, and I'm like, yes, this is what I needed. Being able to help people in different facets every day, whether it's hey, how do we interpret this contract language? Or hey, how does FMLA work? Or how does short-term disability work? Or I got injured on the job. How can we, you know, work with the companies that don't, take advantage of me? All those little things made the job so much more fulfilling. So I started getting involved that way, and going to union meetings and seeing what else was available to get involved in. And eventually, the local hired me on about 2.5 years ago. to do the communication efforts for the UPS contract campaign. And it was literally just pull me out of service for a year to take on the extra work that was happening for the contract campaign. And they felt that I was, I guess, too valuable to send back to package car. So they brought me on to do communications and become a business agent. So now I represent um, Maple Grove UPS building, um, Wilmer UPS, Granite Falls UPS, Slayton Center for UPS, the Minneapolis Airport, as well as a unit of about 100 healthcare workers down in Madison, Minnesota, at a hospital slash clinic. My wife's a union nurse here in the cities, and so it kind of made sense for me to take over that contract when we had some movement here at the local because I kind of knew more about the nursing world than most. But yeah, I love the job. I do a lot of our political work too. So last week I was out in DC with meeting with congressmen about labor issues, try to get their support for things like the PRO Act that we need to get passed, keeping right to work out of Minnesota. I don't think it'll ever happen in Minnesota, but we need national right to work legislation repealed. I mean, it's probably the most damaging thing as far as organizing efforts go. But there's a lot of pieces of legislation that we're working on. Another one is the misclassification of FedEx workers. So people always say, well, how come FedEx isn't union? Well, they're classified under the railroad, the RLA, which is from a long time ago. The Railroad Act essentially was when FedEx was putting a lot of their stuff on the rails and airplanes. And now I think like 90 or 95% of what they deliver comes on truck, you know? So, what that means for FedEx workers is that if they want to organize or become union, the whole country, coast to coast, has to vote at 50% plus one to join the unions, which is almost an impossible organizing task, and FedEx really takes advantage of that. So, there's a lot of legislative things coming down the pipeline that we're working on, which is always exciting. And then for our local specifically, I know we kind of talked about this, Ray, but we started at our local, and now it's kind of spread to our joint council, which is the Midwest Teamsters, is a futures committee. So we have a lot of young Teamsters members that, it takes a while to kind of feel your way into and feel like you belong in the union. And so we're trying to like speed that process up and say, no, you matter just as much as people who've been here for 10, 15, 20 years. And get them involved, and they're very, very active and excited to like engage in union activities, whether that's going to a picket line for Liuna City. We had the city workers on strike here in Minneapolis, so we held a barbecue for them recently. I use my connections in education around the metro. My folks are still teaching. My stepdad's a superintendent. My mom's a principal now. So I have friends who are teaching. So I use those connections to go to like career days, and we bring some of our young Teamsters along, and we talk to young students, specifically seniors, about union jobs. And I use myself as an example and say, hey, you can go to college, like, and be successful and do chase the career path that you want to do. And that's great. But if you want to, make a lot of money and not go to college, that's an option too. And there's apprenticeship programs and the trades and things. So just kind of open up, some eyes maybe to some other options where young people can be successful without having to put themselves into debt. But yeah, it's super rewarding. Every day is different. Every day is challenging. But I tell you what, I never thought in my whole life that I'd be doing this for a job, but I'm so glad I am, because being able to improve the quality of life for people through their work is one of the most gratifying things. You can change somebody's entire life with a better paycheck and benefits, and that's what essentially this union does. And just really proud to be representing it.
That's awesome, man. Wow. And you guys are busy down there, and that's just a breakdown of a lot of things you guys get involved with. I mean, that's huge. You're taking a trip out to DC like that and advocating for the members. That's huge. What does a typical day look like? Just say just a regular day for your role at the union hall. What does that look like? How do you describe that?
Every day is different. With UPS, there's always more coming. We've got I'll use today. So today's our membership meeting day. So it's one of the busier days of the month. So I got 3 kids. So drop my kids off at school, get down to the office a little after 8. and we're meeting here. Usually in the morning is when I kind of try to get most of my stuff done for the day, as far as like if there's any termination letters, I find, if somebody got disciplined somewhere, or I get a letter that said, something was denied for somebody. Well, I got to reach out to that member and see what's going on and make sure we can nip things early if possible. So if anybody got some severe discipline, or maybe they're out of work, I want to figure out how we can get them back to work. So that's usually how I start my morning, is the high priority issues. Um, and then at 11 o'clock today, I've got a 1 hour meeting through Zoom with a woman named Rena Hatch, who's at our international, and she's in the training grants department. So later this week, I'm going to go to Local 391 in South Carolina and do a new stewards training, which I'm really excited about. Like I said, I have a background in teaching, so it's a passion of mine, and I'm going to get to train some new stewards into all that they need to know to have a basic understanding of the job and wine garden rights and the history of the Teamsters and all that good stuff. So, but we're meeting about that just to kind of run through the information one last time. And then at 1 o'clock, we have our afternoon membership meeting. It's just for people who work overnights or part-timers that maybe they are sleeping during our 8 o'clock meeting in the evening. So we offer an afternoon one. And then after that, we've got a staff meeting. Dennis Roberts, who's from the Central Region, he's flying in today for our we have tri-state tomorrow, which it's basically escalated grievances. If somebody got fired, for example, and we couldn't get them back to work at a local level hearing, then it goes to a state panel. And so he's coming in. So I got to go pick him up, and then we come back here, and then it's essentially prep work for our 7:30 stewards meeting, and then the 8 o'clock membership meeting. Our women's committee tonight is they're going to do food every night, or every meeting, excuse me, for every month. From here on out as like a fundraiser. So we're going to help set up with that. I think they're doing sloppy joes tonight. So folks, maybe they get off work after a long day and they haven't eaten yet. They can, like, well, there's going to be food down at the local, and the $8 I spent for some sloppy joes and chips and a drink will go towards raising money for the women's committee that we started to engage our female members. Because, to be honest, most blue collar work in general is typically male. And sometimes our female Teamsters feel like maybe they don't have as much of a voice in our union, and so we want to make sure that they feel absolutely empowered to be equal and have equal footing in every issue. So we started that last year, and that's grown a lot over the last year. So really excited about that. But yeah, we're gonna help them get their food going, and I'll probably put my teeth in the glass about 11 o'clock tonight when I get home. But yeah, today's a big day, but every day is different. Every day is different. You never know what's going to happen. There's been days when I've come to the office. I'm like, all right, I got one thing I got to get done. Like I gotta red line a contract that we just negotiated and send it off to the company's lawyer and make sure they look it over and say, yes, that's what we agreed to in negotiations. And then there'll be like 9 things that happen. Like somebody will call and say, yeah, I'm out on short-term disability. I haven't been paid in like a month and a half. I'm like, oh, all right, well, I got to make some phone calls here, because that goes to the top of the list, right? But I'll tell you one thing, this job's a lot of things, but it'll never be boring. I can promise that.
Wow, man. Wow, a lot of hats there. A lot of different things you get to do there. Man,
When I
that's
did my new business agent training, our international offers all sorts of trainings for different things, from communications to organizing, etc. And the new business agent training I went to, the Dennis Howers, his name is an awesome guy who's running the training. He said the first question in this presentation was, what does a business agent do? And I had been a business agent for like a month, and I was like, oh my gosh. And then like 2 seconds later, he switched the slide and it said, how about let's start with what a business agent doesn't do? Because that list was probably shorter. You have to kind of be good at everything. You have to be sort of a Swiss Army knife. You have to know labor law. You have to know how to write an affidavit for a labor charge if the company's intimidating workers during an organizing effort. You have to know how FMLA law works, and you have to know how short-term disability benefits work. You have to know multiple contracts, and which contracts have X holidays and their pay structures, and you also have to have like a big heart for people. We had sadly, over the weekend, one of our UPS drivers passed away over the weekend, and I've known him since middle school. We drove together, so now we're calling his family, right, who I've known for a long time, and about death benefits, right, and all the benefits that he had while he was here, what that means now, and explaining those things. And so it depends on the day, and it depends on what gets thrown your way, but you have to be good at everything, or um, people could really feel a negative impact if you screw something up, because people become union members for a lot of reasons, but for the most part, it's because of the benefits package, right, with your pension and your health care and things, and so you have to get that stuff right. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a lot, but it's like I said, it's really rewarding work. So that's the motivator to do better every single time.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, sorry for the loss as well, man.
Thanks.
There's too much of that going on, but the older you get, the more you know, and unfortunately, that's part of that.
Yeah.
You connect with people and make those
Hmm.
relationships. So, I mean, you have to be a people person. You have to be involved in the community. So, wow, that's huge. What are some of the most common issues drivers bring to the union when it comes to, let's say, how does the union assist them resolving them?
Um, I'm just gonna go off of the most recent texts I've got just to kind of surmise what you're saying. So the one thing I get the most is sort of being a mediator, I suppose, between the employee and the company. Um, Sometimes the word harassment gets thrown around a lot as and it can be a little blurry as far as like over supervision can be harassment, right? But being managed isn't harassment either. And sometimes people are being harassed and sometimes they aren't. And so when the company is being overly aggressive on, so I have to do some digging and figure out what's going on, where the truth lies, and then resolve that issue. And sometimes that means going in and shutting the door on a manager and saying, "Hey, here's the deal. Like, you're either going to treat this person with respect or we're going to have to go a different path, right?" And that path sometimes means we have a harassment grievance from one of our centers that's going to the national grievance panel because they didn't take us seriously when we said you're not going to mistreat this guy. Um, so it depends on, the situation, but a lot of times it's saying, "Hey, so and so is being a jerk today." Okay, well, what's going on? And then we figure out what the communications were, if a line was crossed, and then how we're going to move forward. Because even if it wasn't harassment, that person still has to go and work with that manager tomorrow, and we need to figure out how everybody's going to be able to work together. And so a lot of times it's just creating sort of a bridge between the employee and the employer. And to be honest, that's a really difficult, I don't want to call it a game, but it is kind of a game to play. Like I have to I have a duty to represent the drivers and the loaders and every single person who works at that UPS hub in question. And at the same time, if the company hates me, like can't stand me in their building, can't stand the sight of me, then when they get a chance to take it out on the member, they're gonna do it, right? So like let's say I come to them with an issue. They might push harder just because they don't like me, right? So I have to have good respectful discourse with the company to where I'm not gonna disrespect them or do something that they can say, Scott Wilkie's an absolute jerk or Scott Wilkie comes in here just to piss us off, right? I'm very, very good at communicating in a way that's respectful. It's clear that they know what the expectations are from their members and that we're going to hold them accountable. But at the same time, I'm not going to go in there and start dropping F-bombs and cause a scene and slam my fists on the desk because then the next time I have to come to them and say, "Hey, I need you to get Ray his job back," they're going to say, "Piss off. We're going to a tri-state panel. He can ask for it there." And then Ray now has to sit out without pay until hopefully getting his job back at a panel. Right. And so there is this back and forth of like, yeah, we need to hold the company accountable, but we have to do it in a way that's respectful because the same way that I can take it out on them, they can take it out on the members too sometimes. And so we have to find ways to work together and problem solve, because if it's always just like poking and poking and poking each other, well, nobody really wins. And the people who actually lose are the members. If the union and the company are at each other's throats, the people who actually lose are the workers. And so we have to make sure we run that course in the right direction. Otherwise, it could be, what's the point of having me as your representative if all I'm doing is causing problems, right?
Yeah, you I've seen that in the past, or was it something that was kind of diverted because of training that helped you see that, or um,
With working with management.
yeah, I mean,
So I was in a really, like, I guess, fortunate situation where the labor manager at UPS, who's kind of the opposite of who we do. So I'm the business agent. I represent the members. The labor manager represents the company on labor issues. And the guy for UPS here that we deal with in Minnesota, North Dakota is named Tom Schuberg. So I call Tom like 2 to 3 times a day, and he calls me like 2 to 3 about different things because there's always stuff happening, right? Um, but the guy before Tom's name was a guy named Mike Kettler, who's a great guy. And that's actually how I got started at UPS. He was friends with my dad. And so Mike is like, hey, you should start driving at UPS. So when I came on as UPS driver, I had no idea what the labor manager was. I just knew that was Mike, and Mike got me. So nobody talked to me for like my first year because they thought I was like in with management, right? And I had no idea. They're like, well, aren't you management? I go, no, man, I'm just driving. Why? They're like, oh, we see you talk to Mike once in a while, so it kind of got us worried. I'm like, and that's when I first realized this dynamic, right? Um, but because I knew that Mike was a good guy, for years and years and years, and then I see how he works with the union and, believes in people and does the right thing and does right by people. I had a good example of what a labor manager's, relationship with the union is, right? He's very fair and very honest. And so I try to be very fair and honest when I'm working with the labor manager too. And at the end of the day, it's like when it comes to, every single issue, I always try to do things the right way, because as soon as, and this is true in any facet of life, but as soon as somebody thinks that you're, a liar, or you have bad character, well, then, life's gonna be a lot harder in whatever endeavor you're doing. And so I just always try to make sure that if I'm honest with the member, I'm honest with the company, and when we're problem solving, we're doing it the right way and not trying to, manipulate or change facts in order to, maybe sneak something through. But yeah, I had a good example to start my career off with, and knowing Mike before Tom, and then getting to shadow John, who's our president now, for a while, just to see how those interactions go and see that at the end of the day, it's just everything is just problem solving. And it's no different than anything else in your life. If you're married and you got to, problem solve with your spouse on, how you're going to spend money, or where you're going to live, or, hey, are kids failing math? How are we going to, solve this problem? It's the same thing when it comes to labor relations. It's looking at everything with a full scope of the problem, and trying to bring solutions that benefit each party.
wow. I mean, if it, so, like beyond grievances, can you tell us more about the financial or legal support available to drivers or
Mhm.
union members?
So obviously with, like, and we're both out of UPS, I'll use that as the example. With UPS, we've got great, industry leading pay and benefits, and your pension through your retirement. Um, but we also have what's called the Teamsters Service Bureau, which offers different kind of support. So the Teamsters Service Bureau, it's down the hall from my office here. And essentially all the locals here in the Midwest pay into um, this initiative that helps out Teamsters when they need it. So I got a phone call. I'll use this. This is a real example that just happened last month. I got a phone call from a driver I used to drive with, who, after work, he'd go home and have a couple of beers. Well, two turned into three, turned into five, turned into I'm calling into work because I can't, I'm not sober yet, and he needed to get into treatment. So, I got him help with getting set up with a short-term disability claim, where he's, it's not your benefits and your job, everything stays intact. You get a little bit of financial compensation through our benefits to kind of stay afloat money, so to speak. But he's got three kids, and that financial hit is, it's a big deal. So through the service bureau, they're going to pay for 1 month's, I think, and I don't know what the dollar figure is, but it's essentially his utilities and his mortgage for a month and take care of that piece entirely. It's like kind of like an emergency funds. So he submitted his bills for the month, and the service bureau is going to cover it. And then we have a food shelf downstairs, which some people might have different ideas of what a food shelf is. It's basically a mini grocery store. And so I went down there and I loaded up with 96 pounds of food and milk and everything. And it was like 2 weeks worth of groceries and brought it to his house, and kind of created a safety net of, all right, we've got your benefits are covered, right? Well, he's going to do a 1 month in treatment program for substance abuse. Um, so you've got that part taken care of, right, through your health insurance. Service Bureau is going to cover your utilities and your mortgage for the month while you're out. And then we've also got some money coming in through short-term disability, so stay afloat money, right? And then now we've got half the month covered in groceries, and I can also get you another 2 weeks worth of groceries next week, right? In order to help kind of ease the pain that you're going through. And so and that's just one example, but there's a lot of safety nets like that in place for folks as being a Teamster member here in the Midwest, where if you're going through something, we have other support systems that quote unquote regular jobs don't have. If you're going through divorce, we have attorneys that we pay to give free counseling to our members for. Or if you're going through some other legal issues and you're just like, I just need, 30 minutes with a lawyer to get some questions answered here and some advice. Okay, we can set you up with that. Um, when it comes to mental health services, which is, incredibly important right now, our our health insurance at UPS is fantastic, but not everybody's is. We have smaller businesses that aren't on, don't have the best, health insurance in the world. It's good, but it's not UPS, which is like the gold standard, right? So the Service Bureau offers free counseling, for like half-hour sessions and things like that for folks who maybe they just need to talk to somebody. Um, and I don't know all the details of it, so I don't want to fill in any blanks, but I do know that folks use those resources pretty regularly, especially given, how expensive life is right now. And a lot of folks are struggling for different reasons. It doesn't matter if you make 100K a year or not, folks are still struggling for other reasons that may not necessarily be directly tied to their financials. So that Teamster Service Bureau especially is one thing that we're very proud of. And the food shelf downstairs, it's if you're listening, you're a Teamster, you need it, or even if you just live in the Twin Cities, we serve everybody in the community. Yeah, I know it's run by the Teamsters, but if somebody shows up and they're not a Teamster or a union member in general, and they say they need food, then we help them out. And it's something we're really proud to do. But if you're listening, you're like, hey, I could use some groceries. Uh, Come on by. It's open tomorrow, Tuesday, and also Wednesday of every week. I think it's like 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. And you show up, no questions asked. Say, I need some groceries. They'll just say, how many people in your house? Do you have any food allergies? And then they'll get you everything under the sun from I mean the beef down there is like locally sourced beef, and sometimes those food shelf guys, if it doesn't get used, the food shelf guys who are run by our Teamsters retirees, they'll run upstairs and be like, hey Scott, and we got a bunch of stuff that's not going to make it till next week. We know you got a family of five. Can you take XYZ? I'm like, yep, bring it up. And if not, I'll get rid of it and make sure it goes to good use and doesn't get, thrown away. So um if people are listening and you feel like you could use some help, swing on. If you're in the Minneapolis area, swing on through, and those retirees will absolutely take care of you.
Man, that's awesome. How many companies does the local 638 cover?
Gosh, this is a good question. I should know this off the top of my head. I think we're at like around 20. So we have mostly UPS. We have about 5,000 members, and I'd say about 4,200 are UPS workers, right? So vastly, UPS. However, we represent, like if you go to the Target Center or you go to US Bank Stadium, all those folks taking tickets, the folks who change over the field or the stadium floor between different events, those are all teams. The electricians are Teamsters, local 638 members, service staff or 638 members. Um, so it was cool. My daughters are in gymnastics, so we went to watch the Olympic gymnastics trials, and all those folks doing the changeover from the basketball court to the big gymnastics. Those were all, our members, so that was kind of cool.
Wow.
Doing that. I'm trying to think of some other ones. If you stay at the Hilton Hotel in Minneapolis, um, those are all Teamsters Local 638 members. So if we ever have banquets or people come to town to stay, we always, suggest they go there because they'll be well served there. Um, and then, I gave the example of the healthcare workers down in Madison that I represent. Olson Fish in Minneapolis. So if you go to like a Colborne's grocery store, a Cub grocery store, and you go to like the seafood section, you'll see Olson Fish food. So they process all sorts of different kind of fish. But yeah, I'm trying to think of some other obscure ones that people may recognize. We have jurisdiction for some things in our area and some things not, because there's another local called Local 120, who's very typical to us. And so they have all of UPS in South Dakota, and they have UNFI trucking in Minnesota, but we have it in North Dakota, right? So sometimes those jurisdiction things are like, yeah, we have this, but they have this. And we also have like for student bus drivers. So it's cool. My daughters after school, they take a bus home, driven by one of our local 638 Teamsters, which is kind of cool for me. That we have St. Cloud Metrobus. And I'm just going off the top of my head here, thinking of all these different contracts. We just got a new one called Twin Cities Acoustics. Um, we have Heinrich Envelope. So a bunch of different businesses. And at the end of the day, I always tell people, we have A to Z at the Teamsters. It's airline workers to zookeepers and everything in between. If you name it, you can be a Teamster if you want to be. But our local is a general local, so we can kind of get most things. Some locals are more specific. So let's say I had last year, for example, a local brewery here in Minneapolis shoot me an email and say, "Hey, our brewery out in Seattle just became Teamsters. We want to become Teamsters." I said, "Great. I'm going to get you in touch with, the guys down the hall." And they're like, "Well, why?" I said, "Well, because they have alcohol and brewery and liquor and that kind of stuff. So that's their jurisdiction. So they do all the transport from the three-tier system that we have here in Minnesota. So that's their jurisdiction. If it's dairy work, like Kemp's Dairy, that's down the hall. We don't have dairy. Pipeline work, that's local 346, right? So it depends on what industry it is, but there's a Teamsters local to represent whatever you're doing for work if becoming union is something that you want to do.
And so any feedback from drivers on some of these projects you guys are on or contracts? I know it was the huge UPS contract that went through. You get any feedback from that?
Yeah, and so overwhelmingly positive, right? I mean, our package car drivers right now, and I'll just for folks who may not be familiar with UPS, the top scale, which takes you 4 years to get to the top of the pay scale, is $45. It's $44.99, so $45 an hour. And a lot of our drivers were upset about the excessive overtime that they were getting. I worked as a UPS driver through the pandemic, and it was 6 days a week, sometime over 60 hours sometimes. And for some folks, they want the money. For me, I had little kids and a wife that works 12-hour overnights. It was not fun. So we got better language for that. And now if the company wants to work you to excess during the week, which is past, 9.5 hours a day, they're going to pay big penalties for it. I just signed a grievance check the other day for a driver who he worked, 50 some hours in a week, and he's asked them, not to do that. And his grievance check for that 1 week was $1,200. So you think about somebody who's making $45 an hour, worked 50 hours, plus they're getting a $1,200 bonus check for the week. That's going to motivate the company to take some extra work off so you can get home and see your family. So hopefully they do the right thing and lower his dispatch so he can get home and see his kids. But if not, I mean, the guy's going to be incredibly wealthy, making an extra $1,200 a week for the company to say, no, we're not going to give you a little less work, right? So we got some better language that will motivate the company to get those drivers home to see their families that want to do so. We got pension increases, wage increases were big, especially for our part-timers. Now a lot of our part-timers don't have to work, three jobs. They can maybe just work the one job, or maybe they want to work, their second job. We have a lot of people who do freelance work, like realtors, for example. We've got a few realtors that I know that they work the preload because they're making minimum 23.75 an hour. Um, and then they've got industry leading healthcare and a pension when they retire, but then they can go do their realtor work during the day, right? And if sales slow down or the market, doesn't do what you want it to do, well, you still have that baseline income with great healthcare and some, retirement funds. So it creates a good safety net for folks. But now those folks who maybe they couldn't stick around at UPS because they're looking for another job, now they've got some really good stable income. We also got MLK Day as a paid holiday, which was important. Where no contract is ever complete, right? You always want to get more in the next contract cycle. And so, um, I've already talked to people who say we need to get Juneteenth next, and I agree. Absolutely. That's on the docket for the next contract cycle. Among other things, right? There's always topics that come up, but for the most part, people are very, very excited about what we got. And, compared to the rest of the industry, um, I would say it's heads above everybody else, right? And if you compare FedEx and Amazon, these companies that are trying to do the same thing that UPS is doing, the compensation and the benefits and the 300 pages of agreements with the company, make it a much, much better place to work.
Nice. Any projects looking up that they should look out for, or anything on their rate on the radar, especially for UPS? I know it's a huge contract. How? I guess circle back. How hard is it to get the language changed? I mean, that's seems to be a huge task. Guys are working on it for days on end sometimes, right?
Yeah, so this last contract that was negotiated, I mean, it was basically 8 months of negotiating when you figure, we have so there's three layers of the con. There's a local supplement, which is just language for local 638 members. An example of language that we have in that piece of the contract that's just for people in North Dakota in our section of Minnesota is um, that's different than the other supplements of the contract would be. We get to and this might not seem like a big deal to some people, but it is because UPS hates it. We get to try out bids and turn them down if we don't like them. And I'll use myself as an example. When I was a package car driver, I signed and won a bid for an inside combo job. And it was overnight. And I'm like, well, my wife works overnights, and so I can work overnights, and we'll be on the same night shift. And then, I'll take a little bit of a pay cut, but I'll have a much less demanding job physically, mentally, and it'll be more consistent, and the schedule will be better. So I won that bid, and turned out it was not as great as I thought it was, especially with the scheduling and the sleep stuff. And I'm like, oh, this isn't going to work. Now, everywhere else in the country, you're stuck with that job for a year, right? You have to take it because you signed it, you won it, and you tried it, and it's yours. In Local 638, we have language that says you have 10 business days, essentially 2 calendar weeks, to see if you like it. And if you don't, you can go back to your other job. And then it goes to the next person on the list. And if it wasn't for that language, it might have ruined my marriage, honestly. It was bad. And so we have that language in place so people can not be tied to things that could be detrimental to them that seem good on the surface, or maybe it's not exactly what the picture was painted when they signed it, right? So that's in our local supplement. And then the central region has language that's just specific to this middle third of the country. And then the national supplement, which is the biggest section, is all the language from across the country. And that's what takes the most time to negotiate. So, John, who's our president of the local, he was out negotiating that for, he'd be gone for Monday through Friday, fly back from DC, fly back on Monday, be there till Friday, and then he'd be off for a week. And it was like 2 weeks on, 1 week off for a while. And it took until August to get all that squared away and then get it ratified where everybody in the country voted on it to get it through. So it does take a while. Now to your exact question was, how do you get that good language in there? it stems from having so many members, right? This power in numbers. We have 300, it's about 350,000 Teamsters in that work for UPS, right? And so if 350,000 of us say we're not showing up to work if you don't get us better pay, wow, UPS is going to lose, millions and millions of dollars, every hour that we're not on the clock, moving, keeping the supply chain moving. And when UPS is also like 5% of GDP, you know, us pulling the e-brake on this supply chain would be detrimental in so many ways. And so the employees really hold the key to the company's vehicle. And so when the employees, all these Teamsters say, we need this, and if we don't get this, we're not coming to work. That's where the power comes from to get things done. And so we had, thousands and thousands of proposals that came in for the same issue saying, need better pay, need better pay, need MLK Day as a holiday. We need to start getting AC in trucks, right? We need to get fans in the buildings. We need to get, stiffer language on excessive overtime, right? So we had a list that we were going in with that said we have thousands of people saying that this is a strike line item for them if we don't get it. So if you guys don't do it, it's at your peril. And so it forces them to say, okay, well, shit, 350,000 people aren't showing up to work, and we can't possibly hire that many replacements to go through a strike. And they have people that, you know, count cents and dollars down in Atlanta that know exactly what that would do. And they made the right decision, and they came to the table and they met, pretty much all of our asks. And I shouldn't even call them asks, they're basically demands. And got it done. And that's what wins contracts. It doesn't matter how good your business agent is or the people running your local is. The power comes from the members and the solidarity within the members and other unions. We've helped other unions win contracts. The teachers contract here in Anoka-Hennepin. I don't think that district realized that, Teamsters and other unions don't cross picket lines, and these school districts rely on union workers to help operate the schools. And so when they were given these, crap raises to these teachers, and I took that personally because, my dad teaches in that district. So we rolled up there with the Teamsters Local 120 semi, and we hopped on the mic and told them, here's the deal. We represent first student bus drivers. They don't cross picket lines. We represent UPS workers that deliver all the office supplies and the gear for the sport, for all the sporting events and all these things that they need to operate. We're not crossing picket lines. How are they going to get their food for the cafeteria? Through Cisco, through UNFI? Oh, those are Teamsters. They don't cross picket lines. And once they realize, oh, shit, we can't operate without union workers operating our business, right? Now all of a sudden they came to the table and they got folks raises. Local 120 operates the transportation services for one of the companies that we were on strike with, and when they didn't cross the picket line, that's what tipped the contract to get over the finish line because they couldn't operate anymore. So solidarity is always what wins good contracts, whether it's internal or external.
Yeah, yeah, that's huge. If people want to get upset about something that they didn't feel like they got heard, they got to really think, hey, this is something that we as members have to come together on.
Yeah.
If we want to be, like you said, that union that we want to be,
Hmm.
well, how engaged are we? Yes, that's one of the other thing is, they got certain topics that hot topics, right? That people
Yeah.
have in their mind that after the contract's done that they want taken care of. Well, let's get it working on for the next contract.
Yeah.
Um, let's talk about it. Let's get engaged again. Like you said, you got the member meeting and those proposals that are important. Don't just ignore those. Yeah. A lot of times people see those proposals and they think it's not for me.
Well, and I think a lot of people don't really engage in the proposal process because they think, oh, well, what's this? What's this one piece of paper matter? Or are they really going to pay attention to this? Yeah, absolutely. And what was really cool is when there was like a pre-negotiating meeting with all the union members or not all the union members, all the labor leaders for the Teamsters here in the Central Region. And they organized all the proposals into different categories, basically by language, right? So for excessive overtime, we're looking at Article 37 language, right? So, and they had them, and you could see it was like little bar graphs across the table with all these proposals piled because they're all in single sheets of paper, right? And you could just walk around and see which issues are more important and also which locals had the most proposals. So like local 638 had a ton of proposals. We drove around for a month and a half. We have 40 UPS centers that we represent. And we drove, it took us a little over a month to get to all of them. We were doing two a day um, during the work week, because obviously nobody'd be there on the weekends, but we were doing two a day for like 5 weeks to go to every single work site to make sure that we were there in person. So that way people didn't have to take some extra step in order to get the proposal in, right? We got there before your shift and we had all the stuff set up and you could come over and make your proposals in person. So we wanted to make sure that we had gave everybody the opportunity to be engaged in the process. And it was super fruitful for us because we got to see the impact that it made, right? All these proposals that people were putting in and things that some people may have scoffed at the beginning, like because again we're a male dominated industry, but language for breastfeeding moms, right, in this UPS contract, and making sure that they get paid time if they need to pull over and pump milk because they're a breastfeeding mom, and having a space that's not a restroom or a closet or something, but a designated space at every UPS facility for moms to pump in private so they don't have to, do that in their truck or something like, right? So that kind of language, it may not seem like a big deal to, because it's not harassment language, it's not wage language, which is what, people usually gravitate to. But I'll tell you that language has been super impactful for the people who need it. Um, so I would, again, I would just say that it doesn't matter what contract cycle you're in, you're always pushing forward, and those small things sometimes turn into really big things, later on. And I've been able to see the impact for these moms that a lot of time have to quit because they can't, be a mom at UPS.
Wow. Is there any way that proposals are going to get easier? I know you put in all that effort, maybe electronically or something like that. You see anything like that on the horizon?
Yeah. I mean, they kind of started experimenting with that through the UPS Teamsters app that they made, which I applaud our IBT for being, innovative in that sense. It was really helpful, especially for our rural folks, um, to be able to put proposals in that way. But it wasn't the proposal process. It was more of like I guess you would call it sort of like a survey. You could put in, what are the most important things to you, right? And so we knew going in. I mean, look, I go to UPS hubs 4 days out of the 3, 4 days out of the week, right? I know what people need. I'm here. I have, I take 40 phone calls a day. I know what the issues are, but it's good to have that data from coast to coast on what people are seeing and where and what issues are more important where. And so they did kind of a survey type thing. I think eventually we'll probably get to an electronic version of that. I think hopefully we'll eventually get to an electronic version of grievances too. Just because, and this is, I mean, and maybe people will think this is interesting, but it's kind of like going to court when you have a grievance hearing, right? And so you have to have your documentation in order. And for folks who maybe don't file out of grievances, maybe they forget to put a date at the top, or maybe they forget to sign the bottom, or maybe they forget to put the language in on what section of the contract was violated, right? And so if you have an issue with the company and then we take your grievance to a hearing and the company said, well, is this grievance even timely? Because you never dated it. How soon after the incident did you file this grievance? Oh, it was like 3 days later. Well, we don't know that, right? So, but if we have an electronic version, right now we've got digital timestamps, and it's gonna, just like if you forget to put your zip code in when you're, trying to order a pizza through the Domino's app, right? It's gonna flag it and say, hey, no, got to go back and finish that one. You forgot to sign so I think we're getting there, and hopefully in the next few years we are, because that'll create some transparency for folks too in the proposal process or the grievance process to be able to go back and review things and have some receipts and say, no, I did this, and this is when I did this, and this is what it looked like. Um, but moving our union into the digital age is difficult because some of these practices are, need wet signatures for some things, right? And we need, these the structures are built in a certain way, and the safety nets are constructed in a way to protect members. So I think there's a lot of what ifs and a lot of questions that'll have to be answered to make sure that, it's seamless. But I do think we're getting there, and when we do get there, um, it'll be much more beneficial for people. Even the little things like we were talking about, before we have a Zoom call tonight for our membership meeting. We were the only local in the country, local 638, that was doing membership meetings as Teamsters through Zoom, right? I think some other local or other unions have done their monthly membership meetings through Zoom, but we were the first one to do our membership meetings with a Zoom component, so that way folks, from out of the metro could join. Maybe they were working a different shift, could join. And now I've just had a officer from Idaho call, and they have Idaho and Colorado territory. So same situation as us, multi-state territory. People can't make it to the membership meetings. He's asking me, how do you do it? How do you make sure it's secure? How does the webinar stuff work? How does Zoom Pro work? All those questions to make sure that they can have a seamless transition too. So I think a lot of Teamster locals are pushing forward to get, technology on their side in order to benefit their members. It's a little slower than I think we'd all like, but I think it's definitely getting there.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's something to look forward to. That's exciting, especially
Yeah,
with the grieving process. I mean, you think about a training that goes into helping people fill it out correctly or stewards to help them know that, they're doing it correctly. If it
right.
was something that was a fail safe, man, that would take a lot of time, take that money and effort and put it into that program and move forward and looking at some of the new projects. I think that's cool. I mean, especially with the proposals. I mean, a lot of people get frustrated that the divorce wasn't heard, but if they
Sure.
know and get familiar with that proposal process, I mean,
Well, and
it's gonna
it's
be great.
data tracking too. Like a lot of what we do is like proving to the company that something's an issue, right? And how you do that is by having good data. And so if we have digital grievances that we're not like, because we have to manually enter all these grievances, right? We have 6,000 grievances for our local that come in a year, right? And so we have to enter those in manually. We scan them as PDFs. They save in, it's a software called Salesforce. A lot of people use it if they're in, well, sales, but we use it for grievance tracking, right? So I can see how many grievances that we have, how many that are pending and need resolution, how many are for specific, concerns, whether it's again excessive overtime, discipline, harassment, all those things that can be categorized, and then we can say, look how much more blank has gone up this year than last year, right? And I can go to the labor manager and say, hey, look, in this center, ever since you hired the center manager, discipline's gone up 30%. What the hell? Right. And I can prove it. It's not just this, hey, man, this center manager is a jerk. He's throwing around discipline, left and right over petty things. And what the hell's going on here? I can say, look at this report. I go, since the day this guy came on or gal came on or whomever, discipline in this center has gone up exponentially almost immediately. Like, why is that? Why can't this guy problem solve with his employees and instead just throws paperwork around, right? I can take a document and show the company that's something that they can't refute and say, oh, you're just complaining. So it's those pieces too that we can take back to the company and solve problems with. And that's the part that I'm most excited about because, whether it's UPS or any company, um, most folks running the show only listen to the numbers, right? So if I can say X issue is making a financial impact to this degree, if I can say we paid out X amount of 9.5 violation grievances this year and X amount last year, and that's cost you $500,000 in 2 years, they can go, oh, we better get a hold of that, right? We didn't, sometimes they don't realize because, they're not tracking the same data that we are. So that's the part that I'm most excited for is being able to resolve issues with the company with tangible documentation that makes sense for both parties and that's irrefutable when we're going into those meetings.
Man, so if somebody has a legitimate health concern, of something that's not in the contract, let's say like your eyes or something like that, that infrared light that comes from the camera. Um, so it's like a hot topic amongst drivers since they're out there at night. But is that something that should go through the grievance process, or is that something that they should look at
Well,
elsewhere?
it definitely could. So, I mean, we got, and I'll use the heat topic, as a as kind of a jump off point for that conversation. So we use data from, well, our own data, but also UPS's data as well on heat related injuries, right? And I think in this topic, and then we use that data to get better contract language, right? And create change. And so in that topic with, those in-cab cameras and, infrared, light and whatever, it's that or it's something different. If we can prove with good data that it is an issue, right, then we can get it resolved. And how we get it resolved kind of depends on the issue specifically. So and let's talk about this one because like you said, it's kind of a hot one right now, or whether it's the new security system they put in with the scanners, the X-ray scanners, right? Going in and out of the building. Some people were concerned that, well, my lunch and my medicine is going through an X-ray scanner every day, right? And so we had to get data on the impact that makes. And so if you're a driver who feels like this is, causing harm to you, my suggestion would be to go to a doctor and have a medical evaluation and see if, what those impacts are, because I can make strong arguments and you can make strong arguments as the person affected. But if we have somebody with an MD saying, here's, data, scientific impact that's taking place, harm that's being done, and by the way, the company's liable for that harm. Now UPS legal gets perked up and goes, oh snap, we need to make some adjustments here. We're in for a lawsuit, right? It's the angle of which you want to put the pressure on the company to create change, right? Do you want to put it on through the grievance process, which the grievance process works, albeit it can be slow, or do you want to go through legal processes, right? Is it something we need to get the Attorney General's office involved in? Is it something we need to get the Department of Health involved in, right? What angle do we want to take to solve the problem? And the more data and involvement you have from different angles, the stronger your argument is. So for this instance, my suggestion would be, if you're somebody who feels like it's negatively impacting your vision or ability to do your job, then maybe you need to see go to the eye doc, right, and get evaluated and see if this is causing some harm to your retinas. Just go to your see if you need to get a referral from your regular provider and get checked out, because if you have documentation from the medical field on the harm that this is doing, and you can get more people involved saying, yeah, it's doing the same thing to me, then that creates an absolute storm in the UPS legal department to get some things changed. That would be my suggestion on that issue.
Yeah, I feel the same way. You know, that way, you can still focus on your job and just use your healthcare. Like you said, we got a lot of benefits. Want to use it for your benefit, and you don't have to beat the drum as much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let the system work for you instead of against you. That's great. What are some other misconceptions that drivers have about unions that maybe you get a chance to speak on? I know you probably hear some things.
Yeah. So when I go and I speak to, like, I spoke to a business class at Champlin Park High School last spring, and it was great because they were talking about like creating businesses, and then what if your workers want to be union? What does that look like? So they were talking about the National Labor Relations Act, and so that's what I came in to speak on. And then at the end, I just took random questions, and the first question I got was, what are the negatives to being a union member? And so I answered very honestly. I said, sometimes you can be the best employee. Let's say you've only been a UPS driver for 2 years and you are the best UPS driver, no, the safest UPS driver, the most efficient UPS driver. Customers love you more than anybody else, but you're making, $15 an hour less than, somebody who's been there 5 years, who may not be as efficient as you, may not be the friendliest, person to, service the customers, et cetera, simply because that person's been around longer. So it can be frustrating for people to say, how come I'm better at the job than so and so, but they make more just because they've been around longer, right? And my argument to that is, well, I know a lot of people that are the best at their job and they get passed up on raises. At least here your raises are guaranteed. You can be, I've seen so many people at other jobs before I came to UPS who were, the best employee at their business and still got passed up on promotions, still got passed up on raises, um, still got treated, not like the star employee will say. But at least in the CBA, you're guaranteed that. So some people get frustrated by that. I don't think we'll ever see sales jobs get organized simply because when you're running on commission, you don't want anybody to put, s-
Yeah.
progression steps in your income, right? It's internal competition to see who can do the best. And so you don't want to, put any types of roadblocks there for people, so to speak. Um, but that's the biggest thing I hear is people say, "Oh, how come I could be the best person, at the job, and I still don't make as much money as the person who's been there longer? That's not fair." Well, that's true in one sense, but the other truth is that your boss doesn't have to give you raises either way, and may not do it. UPS doesn't pay people $45 an hour to deliver packages out of the kindness of their own hearts. They do it because 350,000 of us said you better do it. Um, Another misconception about unions is that it's impossible to fire people. We've got language that says this is what you can be fired for and this is what you can't be fired for, right? And so my argument is no, it's just we know what you can be fired for. And bosses can't make up a reason to say that they can fire you because maybe they don't like you, right? At Amazon, for example, those warehouse workers, they don't even know how many packages they're supposed to fulfill in an hour. They just know whether or not they're too slow or too fast. Or I'm sorry, not too fast, whether or not they're going fast enough, right? And so because of that, they can walk into work today and their key card just doesn't work. And the app on their phone says your employment's been terminated. And that's it. You can call 1-800 number and see how to get your documentation saying that you no longer work here. But there's no HR, there's no boss to talk to. It's literally just show up to work and you don't work there anymore because you weren't working fast enough. But they don't tell you how many packages you're supposed to do in an hour. They just give you alerts on the app on your phone saying that you're behind, right? And so it's a little bit straying from the subject, I guess,
No, that's
but people
eye-opening.
often talk about, the those kind of drawbacks, and I would say, well, the opposite isn't necessarily true either.
Okay. Wow. So how important is it for drivers to stay engaged or Teamsters to stay engaged in their union?
Well, I mean, I'm very biased, right? But I think it's if you're gonna be a union member, you might as well just go all in, right? I mean, if you're gonna pay dues and be a Teamster, right? Then let's get involved and get every cent out of it. You know, I've and this is going to sound maybe like I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, but I've seen so much positive in this organization from all the ways that we can impact people's lives that it's just hard. It was hard for me not to be involved after I got involved as just an assistant steward. I got to see how, just a small amount of engagement with people and making sure that they know their rights can make such a difference, right? Like I'll tell you a quick story. It was Christmas season. They sent a bunch. We got back in late because of a snowstorm. They sent all the unloaders home, and so this manager was going around telling them, "Nope, you got to unload your own trucks." And I was like, "No, we don't. Like you sent your people home because you didn't want to keep them on the clock waiting for us. That's not our job. We can if we want to make the overtime, but we don't have to." And we were exhausted, right? I mean, we were getting beat up this Christmas season. And I got a bunch of guys. No, we just punched out and went home. They couldn't keep us there for another hour on the clock unloading their trucks because they were, trying to save a couple bucks and send their preloaders home or their unloaders home early. And me as a 25-year-old, driver getting to help empower, you know, drivers who've been there for 15 years to say, no, you don't have to do that. Tell this jerk to, no thanks. We don't want to unload our trucks and we don't have to. Our contract says we don't have to do that work. You can offer it to us, but we're not required. And guess what? We're way too tired right now to do it. We're not going to unload 500 boxes just because you wanted to save a couple bucks an hour ago. See you later. So that small example of just being an assistant steward, empowering people, they were like, hell yeah. Like we are exhausted. We do need to go home and sleep and they can't make us stick around and do work that's not ours. You're right. Let's go. So once you get a taste of that feeling, that empowerment, it's almost like addictive. Like, yeah, I want to keep making people's lives better and keep empowering people. And so if you're somebody who wants to get involved, especially if you're in our local, there are so many ways to get involved. And I think that's what's really powerful too, is in most jobs and organizations, anytime you have an idea or something new you want to try, you're always met with, yeah, but, or I don't know, or we'll see. And every idea that I've ever had, every idea that I've ever had or wanted to try since I came on here has been met with, yeah, let's do it. Even when like I went to our principal officer, Trevor, who retired now, and I'm like, Trevor, I go, hear me out. I want to get a train horn. He's like, what? Just hear me out. I'm like, I found it. I go, it's on an auto parts store. It's meant for, it's meant for semi trucks. I can hook it up to an air compressor in the back of my SUV that's going to charge through a converter, and we can bring it to strike lines. And I got these magnets, and I can put it to the roof of my car, and then it's got like a button, and we can hit this train horn at picket lines. It's going to be wild. He's like, how much is it? I'm like, it's like $120. He's like, are you going to use it? I'm like, hell yeah. He's like, go buy it. You know, so and we used it. We've used it at a bunch of picket lines. We used it at my wife's picket line when the nurses went on strike. It was awesome.
Gets
But
attention,
like
doesn't it?
most of the time when you have some like, silly idea like that, people are like, get out of here with that. No, we're not doing that. That's silly, or like getting people to cover my work so I can go talk to high school kids about union jobs, right? I thought that was going to get met with, no, I don't know if that's our area. It's like, oh, go do it. Um, Anything that we've thought about doing or wanted to try, this union has been like, give it a shot. If you're passionate about it and want to do it, go try it. So, you don't find many organizations or businesses or groups that operate that way. And I think that's what's been a lot of fun too, is hearing yes from people when you want to try something new and not just, met with apathy or maybe some subtle rejection about it. And then, oh, maybe he'll go away if we stop talking about it, you know.
Uh,
But there's a lot of ways to get involved, and there's a lot of work to be done. So anybody who's willing to put even this podcast, man, this is extra work
Awesome.
for you, and this is important, creating a platform for people to think about ideas and talk about the job and create engagement and community. I mean, it's invaluable. And so I commend you for this work because it's just important as anything else that the labor movement's doing right now. And I know, man, I had my headset in all day listening to podcasts and listen to audiobooks and things like that when you're on the road. And I know people are listening right now who are over the road right now and maybe trying to stay awake and hopefully engaging in this. And even that's
Mhm.
important, right?
Right.
So
Yeah. I mean, I was gonna say that, echo those same words. Thanks for letting, this happen, not stopping it. And
yeah,
because that's a lot of the ways people can stay connected, when they're out there on the road. And this is another way people can listen to their local, listen to the union and hear that voice from someone who sincerely shows it in their voice that they care. So
appreciate it.
yeah, I really appreciate you, man. So, is there any other ways that people could stay connected or that the union tries their best to stay connected to members?
Yeah, so like for Local 638, we have our monthly membership meetings through Zoom, and that's fine. I mean, to be honest, it's a business meeting, so it's a little dry. It's we have to go over the new business, old business, and just talk about what's coming down the line. But there's a lot of good discussion too. Like people, we have public comment every meeting where people say, "Hey, let's give an example. We've had some break-ins in vehicles at, the Minneapolis hub, right? And what's going on with that? Okay, well, we met with labor and they've got, new security cameras going up. We also have contract language now that if there's break-ins on UPS property in their parking lots, that they're liable for X amount of dollars towards, the repairs, right? So, or lost in damages and things like that. So, that was part of a meeting discussion. So engaging through the membership meetings is good to stay up to date on what's coming down the line, whether it's, we have yearly events like next year we're going to Valley Fair for it's free to the members. Any 638 member can come. It's free to you and your family, and we'll give you some money for lunch too. This last year we did the Minnesota Zoo. So next year's Valley Fair, we do an annual golf tournament. Our TNBC, which is Teamsters National Black Caucus, is very involved. And so Damone Edie is one of our business agents, has been a member of that caucus for years. And they did like a back to school fundraiser where they were giving out free haircuts and backpacks and school supplies and registering people to vote. So it's always volunteer opportunities too if you want to get involved that way. We do a lot on social media. Um, our Facebook page, it's just Teamsters Local 638 is really active. Is and it's not just a bunch of filler content, like some social media platforms are. We try to do like a lot of member features and information about things that people should be aware of, regarding our local and just union labor in general. If there's like solidarity efforts. If you want to come with us to go to a Starbucks Workers United event because the Starbucks is trying to organize, and go hit the picket line, hit the hit the train horn on top of my SUV if you want. I don't care, get involved that way. There's always stuff to do. And so I would suggest to folks if they want to get more involved, we're door knocking right now for candidates who support labor. So if there's a candidate that you like, and they also support labor and they're on our list, come to one of our door knocks and we try to make it fun. We'll buy coffee and donuts before or after. We'll get pizza or something like that, and we go out and we tag team doors. Piggyback back and forth across the side of the streets and just hit neighborhoods and make sure that folks are aware of these candidates that we support. So there's layers of ways to get involved, and I would say just ask. I run the Facebook page, so if you want to shoot a message on there, it'll come straight to me, and we can see what your strengths are, what your interests are, and find something that works for you.
What's the Facebook handle?
I think it's just Teamsters. I think it's just Teamsters Local 638. If you search that, you'll find it. I'm not sure if it's like Teamsters 638, at Facebook or whatever, but
I know the
uh,
website is local is what Teamsters638.com.
correct.
And then it looks like you have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Let me see. If I click on that, it pops up. Yeah, nice. Yeah, you got a nice layout there.
We were trying to get on TikTok during the UPS contract campaign. That's a that's a venture we gotta put a little more effort into. But I will say, like the demographics of Facebook that's where we put a lot of our energy because we have our own data on our own membership, and our the Facebook demographic and the demographic of our membership are almost identical. So that's where we get the most traction. I think during the UPS contract campaign, we had 1 month where we had like 355,000 content views in 28 days, something crazy like that. So most of our viewership is on Facebook, so that's kind of where we spend most of our time. Um, but we're trying to venture out and just sort of meet people where they're at. I do our communications. I always say, communication's a two-way street. So I have a duty to meet people where they are, but hopefully people will meet me at that medium as well. And so,
Yeah, I think it's
however you
huge.
want to engage, I want to engage with you there too.
Yeah, I mean, I met you on Discord. I mean, that was
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And that's another one that I'll hype that up. Our feeder guys have taken the initiative, and which again, if you don't know what that is, it's essentially our over the road truck drivers at UPS. Um, have taken the initiative on the Discord. I didn't, to be honest, I thought Discord was just for like video game nerds. Like
me
John,
too.
like John had a Discord, and I'm like, oh, it's just for like the gamer community, and that's cool. And then I found out like, oh no, it's way more than that, and it's super. I mean, it's a super cool platform, and you can do a lot with it. And so now I'm on like 6 different channels with our futures committee is on there. So we share all of our events and all of our social media stuff. They want to start doing a zine here pretty soon. They want to do bumper stickers and stuff. So it's a good way to collaborate and a good space for that. And yeah, if it weren't for that platform, then hey, we wouldn't be here on this platform, right?
Yeah, yeah. Big shout out to Ryan. Yeah, Ryan
Mhm.
Calvick, he got that going for a lot of that too.
Absolutely.
So yeah, man, this is a great resource. I see how you guys also went down and did a mental health awareness day at UPS in Maple Grove 5 days ago.
Yeah, that was cool. Yeah, that's on our Facebook page. So that's John, our president of our local. He's been a big advocate for mental health for years, and I won't tell his story because it's incredibly powerful, but yeah, he was in a really bad place and reached out, took that first step, which is the biggest step to say I gotta get some help, and he's, in a place now where I couldn't imagine that same guy that, he talks about from years and years ago. And it's just a really powerful story, and he's been a big advocate for that. Again, we have great health insurance where we can get services that, some people sadly in America couldn't dream about.
Right.
And we talk about this a lot where, my oldest daughter had to do she's neurodivergent and had to have a screening that was going to cost like $5,000 or something like that. And so I'm calling around to these places that were suggested to us to go. And they're all like, yeah, sadly, this is an out-of-pocket thing. Insurance doesn't cover it. Sometimes if you have an HSA, that can help. I'm like, oh
Mm,
crap, right? So here I think I'm gonna have to shell out 5K for this thing that
right.
we had to do. And I called Wilson McShane, who does our benefits, and said,
Yeah.
yeah, is there any way that you guys can cover part of this? And she's like, part of it? We cover the whole thing. I go, what? They told me nobody does. And like, nah, you'll pay like $60. I'm like, oh my God. Okay. Right. And so basically what John was doing that day is letting people know, hey, here's some resources. We got some stuff through the HRDC, which is the human rights diversity campaign at the IBT. So we got some resources for people, but like John said, like, hey, I've been through it, and some people are going through it right now, and we've helped a lot of people get to where they need to be. So if you got, you know, you think that life's a little harder than it should be right now, maybe it is, and maybe there's some resources that can help, and use that good health insurance to get you, whatever you think you need. And yeah, we've been putting a lot of effort into that, and we'll continue to do that because, unfortunately, mental health issues are not going away. And to be honest, I don't know what the data says, but I'd imagine it's probably trending upward for a lot of folks. And if the voicemails in my phone are any testament, I'd say it's trending upward too, because a lot of people are hurting in different ways, and the resources that we have, I'm just really proud of, because it's something that we can point to and say, hey, we're trying to be a part of the solution.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, big shout out to Deb over there, Wilson McShane.
Yeah, she's the
She's an
best.
angel. She's
Yeah,
an
she
angel.
is.
Yeah.
That's actually who told me that. Deb Connolly at Wilson McShane. She was the one who was like, she's like, she's like, no, it's covered. I'm like, what?
Yeah, that's
Like, I'm gonna go buy a jet ski now.
she helped me a lot.
$5,000 in my pocket. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. So, so for drivers who never really used union, what's your message to them about why they should be engaged? I know you mentioned Amazon, FedEx.
Mhm.
Maybe give a message to those listeners as well.
So, folks who are working non-union right now, or folks in our union? Sorry.
Uh, well, yeah, drivers who never really used the union,
Oh,
they've
okay.
never been a part of it. Maybe a little apprehensive because they like that. Maybe it's just a mom and pop feel, that's not wrong with that either. But if they're thinking of making a switch or they're, you know, got some misconceptions about unions, what do you have to say for them?
Yeah, well, not especially in the trucking world, not everybody's going to need to be union, and so for some folks, they don't want it. I got my good friend Bo is a contractor truck driver and makes a lot of money, but there's not a lot of security in that either. And you run a lot of risk, right? And for some people, they, hey, they'll do the personal evaluation. It is or it isn't for them. And so I guess I would just say, ask yourself, do you think it's right for you? Yes or no? And that, that's your decision. I would never force somebody into something they don't want to do. But depending on what career you're in right now, I would just ask yourself, is there a possible, solution here to this problem that could be resolved with better wages, with better benefits? If you don't think that you're getting treated fairly on the job, if you think you're getting passed up for opportunities because maybe you don't vote the way your boss does, you don't look the way your boss does, or you don't pray the way your boss does, well, that can all change under a contract. I'll send anybody who wants one a copy of the UPS contract, and you can look it over and say, is that something that, I could utilize in my career? Um, because, for me now, ever having been a union worker for a long time and grew up in that household and saw the securities that it, provided my family, and same with my wife and her career. I'm at the point I couldn't imagine not working union. I can imagine going to work and not being able to tell my boss how I felt about something without fear of retaliation. I get to go to work every day, and if I have an issue, or I want to, dress a certain way, or even like, I'm mixed race, I'm half native, and so I got long hair. Maybe my boss doesn't like my long hair. Well, I don't really care if I'm union, what he thinks about me or how I look. It doesn't matter because I'm equal under my contract. And so, for folks who are looking for equality in the workplace, for folks who, especially young people, and that's why young people are so, unions are so popular with young people because they're running this race right now in this economy a little more uphill than maybe we ran it. And they're looking for an edge and an ability to be successful. And, if you're a young person entering, a career field, I would suggest looking at a union option first, just to make sure that you're not going to get, strung along or passed up on something simply because, you haven't been around to be a favorite, or maybe you're not, exactly what somebody's looking for. Maybe, they're making cuts and they're not going to do it in seniority order. They're going to do it however they feel, right? So there's a lot of security, especially given, the cost of living and the cost of health insurance. And, the word pension doesn't even exist in some people's vocabulary these days. It does if you're a union worker, and you can outlive a 401k, but you can't outlive your pension. And there's just a lot of security there. So if you're somebody who's looking for more security, financially or personally and professionally, I would say, look at union careers and just see what's out there because it'll provide a lot of things that you probably couldn't even think of right now.
All right. So looking ahead, where do you see the union headed? I know the Teamsters have impacted the trucking industry. I know there's other places that you guys are also helping, like you said, that nurses, education. So, what challenges or trends will will you guys need to tackle looking ahead?
Well, I mean, if again the data has anything to say, 2/3 of citizens in the United States approve of unions and support unions. Um, and we have a higher rating now. Union labor has a higher rating now, than we've had in my lifetime for sure. Maybe not since the '60s. And I think that's coming from a lot of reasons. It's coming from the cost of living, and it's coming from the abuse that some people have seen on the job, and the need for stability. So I think that we're seeing sort of, I don't know if you want to call it sort of a renaissance or a rebirth of unions in this country out of, the abuse that people have been taking on the job, especially from companies like Amazon, right? Companies like Walmart, that completely take advantage of workers. And the way that young people have created this sort of resurgence in union labor and gravitated towards, yeah, we could use some equality in the workplace. We're not getting treated fairly. Wages aren't keeping up with inflation. How do we get better pay? How do we get respect in the workplace? Well, you come together with your coworkers and demand it. And I think that the trends that we're seeing right now and the approval that we're seeing with unions is gonna continue seeing more places organize and more places become union, and a rising tide lifts all boats. And so, just because you're not seeing it directly in union organizing in your workplace doesn't mean you're not going to feel the effects. And just a quick example of that, when my wife's contract got ratified here in Minnesota after 15,000 nurses went on strike, um, for a variety of reasons, but especially pay and safe work environments. That benefited the workers in New York State whose contract expired, almost, I would say, within a month, if I remember correctly, um, to where they used that as leverage to say, hey, if they can get it, why can't we? Right. And then nurses, non-union nurses, now have to get a pay bump because all the union nurses got a big pay bump. Right. And so just because, and now we're seeing Amazon is like, oh shoot, I guess we got to give our drivers a raise, right? Because if not, they're going to leave and they're going to go to that union job. And so just because you're not union doesn't mean you're not seeing some of the effects, right? If you have your weekends off, right, it's because of unions were able to get that, and now you have to get your weekends off because union workers got weekends off, right? If you have fire exit signs above doors in your workplace, that's because of a union. They got those, and now you have to have them too, right? So all these things that unions are fighting for benefit everybody eventually in some facet, and people really want that right now. Um, people are sick of being abused in different industries. And so again, just looking at the data, I think 10 years from now, my guess is we're going to see another 10% of the country organized, because we get phone calls. We just had another business last week, say, come on up. We want to be union. We want to be Teamsters. So we're growing, and union labor is growing, and I'm excited for it. Again, I'm a big believer in what unions can do for people, and so I'm excited for people to have, life-changing um, actions in their workplace. You can do a lot for somebody by giving them a better paycheck. You can change somebody's life. And so if you give somebody 10% raise overnight, watch watch how much happier they are at the workplace, right? Watch how much better your production gets. Watch how much, the stress goes down when people get treated fairly and paid fairly and can take their kids to the doctor. All those things create a better, community. And that's at the end of the day what's going to happen, I think.
Man. Wow. Thanks, Scott. Yeah. So, man, you've been there for a while. So, what keeps you motivated to fight for drivers or union members to ensure that they have the support they need? What helps you personally?
I think this has been through my whole life. I had this like sick obsession with injustice. And it's kind of been that way my entire life, where I hate bullies. I hate seeing people get mistreated, taken advantage of. And you see that a lot in workplaces where companies will take advantage of people who don't know labor laws. And I've been bashing on Amazon, but like Amazon is in the Twin Cities metro is preying on East African immigrants, literally seeking these people out who've been in the country less than a month, don't speak English, definitely don't know labor laws or what their rights are, and then working them to the bone until they get injured, then firing them. Right. And so some of these things that are taking place, you ask yourself, like, I know it's not right, but how is that even legal? Right. And so knowing that there's people that are, getting taken advantage of, and especially, I worked alongside, a lot of these folks, and I know their stories, I know their spouses' names, I know their kids' names, I know their hobbies, I know their struggles. And so when I, hear about how they were taken advantage of or mistreated, it's all personal. It's not just names on a spreadsheet of, oh, this happened last week, right? I see a name and they're trying to fire so and so for attendance. And I call up the manager. I go, that they have a special needs kid that they take the doctor to once a week. Why haven't you gotten this person set up with intermittent FMLA? You're going to try to fire this person for call-ins to work when they should have had an intermittent FMLA claim by now. That's wrong, right? I think there's so many examples of that every day you just want to pick up your sword and go fight because it's motivating to see that fight through and help somebody get that victory when they otherwise wouldn't have had. They would have been taken advantage of. Maybe they would have quit. Maybe they would have just said, "Oh, that's how it is." Let the company run over them, and then their kids suffer. Because they didn't know what their rights were. They didn't know that you get 16 hours of activity time through the state, so that way you can go to your kids' conferences, and the company can't tell you no, right? And now we have other laws like Minnesota Safe and Sick Time, where, hey, if you're sick, you can't get disciplined for it. You stay home and take care of yourself, right? And the company can't intimidate you over that, or they're going to get a call from Keith Ellison's office. So making sure that people get what they need because they deserve it, and then when you help people win, man, that fills my bucket up. So I'm just like, let's go do it again. Every day you just want to get in the fight and go kick that bully's ass.
Wow. Nice. Thanks, Scott. I appreciate you carrying that sword for us and doing what you do there. Man, I won't take too much more of your time. I know you got a busy day here. So I know it's been an honor to have you on the show. I know you had a lot to say, so wanted to make sure we took that time to take care of that. So Scott, really great having you on the show today. Covered a lot of ground. I think we together have answered a lot of topics. I think this episode gives the union members a better understanding of what they should do or what their team should be a part of or even what your team does and what they're taking care of on your side. doing it every day to support the union member, the Teamsters local, um, what we can do to unite. That's going to be huge. So I think we touched on a lot of those topics, and I really appreciate you taking the time to break that down for us.
All right, thanks for having me on, man. This is really cool. I'm glad we were able to connect. Thank you, Discord and Ryan Calvig for creating some platforms where we connect, and hopefully this in your podcast and this episode is a way for people to connect further with our local and get more involved, or maybe sparks up a conversation elsewhere for people to get involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so just in closing, for everyone listening, if you want to learn more about the Teamsters or how to get involved, reach out to your local. They probably have a website that you can get in touch with. Like I said, for Local 638 is Teamsters638.com. They also are on Facebook, Instagram. So the efforts are being put forth to try to reach out to you guys so that you can be involved and engaged. So great shout out to everyone at the local Teamsters too for having us take this time to get together with Scott. So there's a lot of great work happening, and that can really make a difference in their day-to-day life as a driver. So thanks again for tuning in to That's Delivered. Stay safe out there, and we'll catch you next time. All right, so that's it.
Awesome. Thanks, Ray. This is really cool, man.